Hey guys, how's it going? Alex Scott here with Consordini.com. Thank you so much for checking out another one of our super cool studio gear reviews. Today we are taking a look at another Kontakt sound library. This is Chris Hein Orchestral Brass Compact. Now, we've already taken a look at Orchestral Strings Compact from the guys over at Chris Hein, and that's an awesome library. It's very full-featured, especially for something that's considered a compact library. It gave you all your basic orchestral stringed instruments, a good amount of articulation, a bunch of different solo instrument options. This video is going to be a little bit shorter than that one was. Because there's a lot of crossover between the two libraries in terms of how they work, so I'm not going to spend as much time going through the features, but also this Orchestral Brass Compact one is a little bit less full-featured. It's still great and comes with plenty of stuff to play around with. It's just not quite as extensive as the Strings Compact library was. So like we did in that one, I'm just going to real quick run through the basic features. We're going to listen to a few sounds, and I'll let you guys know what I think. But before I get into it, big thanks to the guys at Chris Hein who sent over licenses for me to check out these libraries. We've already gone over the strings one, this is the brass one, and then we're going to have a video on the Orchestral Winds Compact library as well. So thank you guys very much for sending those over. I love them. I've actually been using them quite a bit, in particular the solo violin sounds that come with the strings library. I've been using them on a couple of video game projects that I'm working on right now. Absolutely loving them. They are fantastic. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at this Orchestral Brass. Now, I've got it loaded up here. It is a Kontakt library, just like the strings one that we looked at, so you are going to need the Kontakt-Player to load it. That's fine. I use all kinds of NI stuff, so I already have that. But as you can see, compared to the strings layout, it's a little bit simpler. You know, we don't have these multiple tabs or pages like we did in the strings one. I think that's just because string instruments typically have more kind of articulations and more variables at play, so to speak, just in terms of all of the different kind of bowing, and you know, there's a lot of different things that affect the sound. So that one was a little bit more complex in terms of the interface. This one is a little bit more simple. So we just have kind of our basic kind of dynamics and velocity settings here at the top. We can switch between legato and polyphonic, although you can play chords when it's in legato mode. It's not, you know, strictly monophonic, but polyphonic gives you a little bit more free reign with how you're playing your chords. We have some kind of basic note options right here. This is very similar to the strings library. Vibrato, again, something very similar to the strings library, although this one is not quite as full featured. We have body and room, which affect kind of the reverb sound that we've got and the overall body of each sound as we trigger it. And then we have some basic articulations. You'll see that these do not get their own page like they did in the strings one. They are just over here on the side. We do still have key switching for each instrument, which is really cool, but we have sustain, dynamic, which is a very kind of expressive thing. It's great for the solo sounds. And then we have short 1, short 2, and short 3. Ensemble, voices, spread, you know, this is all going to affect how dense your sounds are, especially when you're working with the ensemble settings. And then transient, attack, and sustain, you can kind of model a little bit of what's going on in terms of your attack transient and the sustain of each note. That's really all there is to it. You know, again, it's actually quite a bit more stripped back than the string one is, which on the one hand is understandable because we're working with brass instruments, which are a different beast in their nature and not quite as nuanced as strings are, again, because they're not trying to talk down on brass or anything like that. But with strings, you have a lot more going on. Like I said, the bowing and more control of a vibrato and note-to-note transitions and stuff. Brass instruments are a little bit more simple from a library perspective. So now in terms of the actual sounds that it comes with, we have 3 different solo French horn sounds and then a French horn ensemble, and that same thing repeated for trombone and trumpet, 3 solos and an ensemble. When Chris Hein sampled these libraries, he did so in kind of an unconventional way. You know, usually when you're working with orchestral libraries, you have stuff that was recorded as an ensemble, and Chris Hein actually recorded everything solo. This is true of the strings and wind libraries as well, from what I understand. You know, he really just took each individual instrument, recorded it super dry in isolation on its own, and that's where we get these body and room controls, because they didn't record it in a big hall with a full ensemble or a full section playing. They they instead just recorded individual instruments, and then the library is actually blending them together in these ensemble presets, or whatever you would call them. And so it's a very different approach, and it gives you a lot more control over each individual sound. It also makes the solo instruments a lot more playable. So let's go ahead, and I've just got French horn 1 pulled up here. Let's listen to how it sounds. Very, very nice. That's on the dynamic expression articulation. Really nice. It is very expressive, especially when we have it set there. If we switch it over to sustain, that's a little bit more of what I expect when I hear a French sound, a French horn sound. Now, the one thing I will say, especially about these French horn sounds, is they're not quite as convincing solo as the orchestral ones, particularly the violins. When you're using the dynamic expression and you're playing the solo violins from the strings library, it's a dead ringer for a real session violin player. The French horns feel a little bit more sampled, a little bit more triggered. Now, I don't see anything in here about whether or not they're using round robin samples, where it's, they've got multiple different recordings for each note to each articulation, which can help to give it a bit more of a humanized feel. That was a feature of the strings library, so I'm not totally sure what's going on there, but it does sound really, really nice. And I think that if you needed a good solo French horn sound, it's definitely something that you could use. So let's take a listen to the French horn ensemble. Also very, very nice. That's the dynamic expressive articulation. Here's just a plain sustain. Really, really nice. I like the French horn ensemble a little bit more than I like the solo, but, again, solo French horn is not something we find ourselves using a ton, so overall, really, really nice. Let's move on to and listen to just the trombone ensemble now. This is on the dynamic expression articulation again. I really find the dynamic expression, expressive, whatever it is, articulations in these libraries to be really, really nice. They have a lot of character to them, and you can definitely kind of feel the soul of the players in it. Very, very, very nice. I definitely like those a lot. Now, finally, let's move on to the trumpets. Let's do a solo trumpet first on the dynamic expression. You can see up into the extended range of the trumpet there, but always nice to push it a little bit. And again, it's suffering from kind of a similar problem to what I was hearing with the French horn, where, especially when you get into those fast passages, the note-to-note transition doesn't feel quite right. The quality of the sounds is great, so I think if you were doing slower stuff, it would be excellent. But if you're trying to really get a soloist feeling, I was really impressed with that in the strings. You know, some of the solo violins were just killer. These brass ones, not quite as tight, but still really, really good. So I think if you were doing slow stuff, you'd be fine. Quicker stuff, it might start to sound a little strange, but that's all good. And finally, Trumpet Ensemble Dynamic Expression. Very classic fanfare sound. Yeah, and you can hear it doesn't sound to me like there's any Red Robin stuff going on, or Round Robin stuff going on. I mean, there's definitely different samples based on velocity, but not quite as convincing. But it's still really nice sound. It's got a really nice top end to it, very detailed and very, very punchy and classic sounding in a lot of ways. So this is now just the plain sustain. Very, very, very nice. And that's, I really see the applicability with this brass library in a more scoring setting. I've been using the solo violins from the string ones for lots of melody stuff, lots of stuff where it's very exposed because the solo libraries are so great and the dynamic expression kind of performances are amazing. Not quite as tight here in that regard. However, for an ensemble purpose, you know, if you need some big classic fanfare brass stuff in whatever you're working on, be that film scoring or video games or whatever, these are great, great, great sounds. And you can do quite a bit, even for it being a compact library. You can do quite a bit in terms of working with the sounds and really getting them to where you want. Could it come with more articulations? Yes, maybe, although generally speaking, brass instruments don't have as many articulations. So I think this is a totally fair number to include with a compact library. The samples are clearly very, very well recorded. They've got a lot of really nice detail to them. And I think because they are a little bit more sort of intimate feeling, it's not recorded as an ensemble in a big space. It is these very solo recordings, and we can actually, if we just pull up one of the solo ones again, I'll just do this solo trumpet, and we turn off this body and this room, you can hear just how naked it really is. And then you add the body, which is kind of a short reverb, and then you add the room on top of that. And that's really where you get the vibe out of your sound. And it starts to sound really authentic. When you just hear it naked on its own, it sounds like a close mic, you know, like somebody just stuck one microphone right in front of a trumpet, and that's it. And I think that's generally the gist of how everything was recorded. So it's very cool. It's a very different approach. It lends for a very controllable sound. It lends for a sound with a lot of detail. And when you get the ensemble stuff going, it really does sound very, very authentic, which I really, really like. But yeah, overall, I think it's a solid little library. I wish the solo note-to-note transitions, especially on these solo instruments, was a little bit stronger. But for ensemble purposes, I think it is great. So if you guys are looking for a nice orchestral brass library at a good price, we will definitely stick a link to, I think these are available on bestservice.com. I'm not sure what the current price for everything is, but we will put a link down in the description for sure, so you guys can go check on that and pick it up if it seems of interest to you. I think overall it's a very solid little library. But what do you guys think? What brass sounds or orchestral scoring libraries do you guys like to use? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. Always appreciate hearing from you. If you have not yet subscribed to the Consordini channel, please do that as well. Really helps us out. And of course, always click that notification bell to be kept up to date with our new episodes. But again, my name is Alex Scott with Consordini.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next video.